circle, and one of the long-awaited videos, fan-requested, the What Broke the Fans Codex Orks. So, Orcs. Since the earliest days of Warhammer, they've been a staple of the genre. Whether it's fantasy, 40k, or the awesome Gorkamorka. I was originally going to trace their history back through the earliest editions of Gorkamorka and First Ed, Second Ed, that kind of thing. But honestly, why bother? It actually has no real bearing on where we are now until you get to 3rd edition 40k. So that's the logical start point. Up on screen here are the actual original codexes, as I can bring them up. So, sorry for the image quality, but it can be hard to get decent pictures of these codexes, believe it or not, since they are 30 years old. So, 3rd edition. What were Orcs in 3rd edition? Well, they were very much the comic relief. Gorkamorka pretty much being Mad Max inspired. It had a lot of really, really bizarre sculpts. If you can't tell, this is actually a 2nd edition Gorkamorka era war boss. It's beautiful in its own way, we'll say. Now, there are a lot of odd units left over from Rogue Trader, 2nd edition, that kind of thing, where we got into early 3rd edition. So, what we did in 3rd edition was we updated. We went out and we got all new sculpts for all these units. At the same time, we got Codex Armageddon, which introduced us to the Mad Uruk Gaskell himself, as we now know him. So, 3rd edition is what really started to define the army. Orcs were a middle tier army for the entire edition. They were all around very fun to play with and play against. The hero units hit hard. The peasants died in droves, and nobody was offended by that. In fact, it was quite funny. In fact, a round of orc shooting was always a laugh, as the player needed a tub to hold all their dice when they were doing their to-hit rolls, but only needed one hand to pick up the actual hits. Anyway, Orcs finished the edition a very different faction to how they started the edition, but overall it worked in their favour. When 4th edition came around, things started to get a bit interesting. Very early on in 4th edition, Orcs got a lot of love. They got a lot of new units, new sculpts, and overall had become a very plastic army. This made them a lot easier to collect back in the time when most armies were still 50% metal or more. At the same time as these guys were getting all plastic kits, the Eldar were getting releases with, all the Aspect Warriors were still in metal when they got their re-release. Upgrade kits for a lot of tanks were still in metal. Things like the Fire Prisms gun was in metal. Marines had just updated in middle of 3rd edition to an actual plastic Mark II Rhino, the one we've got now. The old Vindicator, Whirlwind, and Razorback were around for a while still, and they were all metal, the actual weapon components. So Orcs got a lot of love. Unfortunately for them, a lot of those sculpts haven't been updated since then, and several of the sculpts, including the Orc Buggy, were actually left over from Gorkamorka, so that needs an update pretty badly. Anyway, what was really cool about this time was the 3rd, 4th edition of Orcs actually had looted vehicles. Now, looted vehicles were essentially bring whatever model you liked with the same rules, but with terrible ballistic skill and ramshackle. And I couldn't tell you how many varieties of looted tank I saw, but mostly the Lehman Russ comes to mind, usually covered in grots and extra orky armour. So for your viewing pleasure, some looted tanks. Anyway, in this edition with the new Medusa 5 city fight rules, they could really excel, and again, they were fun to play with and against, all without being considered overpowered. You could make any build you wanted. There was Lee Tressider's Grot Horde, there were Orc artillery armies, and believe me, that's as hilarious as it sounds. An Orc artillery army is a thing to be believed. But, eventually, we came along to 5th edition. Now, in the time of 5th edition, the Orcs were, again, pretty well looked after overall. Looters had become a staple in their armies. Orc vehicles did funky things such as driving off in ram directions when killed, often leading to hilarious multi-car pile-ups. I remember one time watching an Orc battle wagon turn 90 degrees after I blew it up, and a beeline into a Land Raider full of an Ultramarines Death Star with Calgar and Honor Guard on board, who was allied to this Orc player. And when it destroyed that very Land Raider, it left Calgar and his Honor Guard just sitting in front of their army. That was always a good laugh, seeing that sort of thing. And, you know, one last thing to keep in mind in this time, stay away from the Death Roller. The new flyers, they were pretty good, with all the DACA and the best ballistic skill in the army. Again, I don't know why this works, but it does. However, this is also a time where builds started to become more limited in scope. See, Orc biker knobs were the default army for many players, and the Foot Horde was vanishing in the face of a changing meta. Whether it was due to the Codex itself, or the books around it, is a matter of debate. But in a world of fast Dark Eldar skimmers, incredibly tanky Drago Wing, hard-hitting wolves, strong fast Blood Angels, something had to give. Right? All of this took us up to 6th edition, and by extension 7th edition Orcs. So, what kind of a state are they in? Well, firstly, let's talk about the good points of the current Orc Codex. Here is a lovely Orc army, I believe went to Adepticon. I don't know where exactly the photo's from, so I can't give full credit, but I put it in the video anyway because I think it's great to see these kind of Orc armies, and it's got a great theme, and that is very much the original Mad Max cover, Orcified, so fantastic, love it. Now, the good points of the Orc Codex in 7th edition. Firstly, the inclusion of Hammer of Wrath. When Orcs charge over 10 inches or greater, they get Hammer of Wrath now. And that's really fluffy. It gives Orcs back a little bit of the combat punch they've lost with all the changes with Overwatch and things like that. The second good point, Ard Boys is an actual upgrade for all Orc Boys, giving them a 4+ save. This makes small 12-man Orc Boys units that are mostly mounted in trucks way more viable, as they can actually withstand basic bolter fire for a change. Thirdly, regular mechs. As cheap characters to help protect your power core knobs from challenges which bog them down and often lead to the unit losing and the poor knob being run down, mechs are fantastic investments now. War bosses still hit like freight trains when they're charging. Power cores, they're everywhere, and then again, weren't they always? 6th point, some of the Orcs' unique war gear pieces are actually really useful, unlike other armies whose relics are a really mixed bag. 7th, Orc bikes weren't too impeded by the loss of their permanent 4+ cover save because of the smoke that they used to produce, right? Because snap shooting really doesn't bother Orcs, and besides, they now get a 3+ jinx save, right? So, who cares? Of course, that said, there's a lot more ignores cover in 7th, and we'll talk more about that later. Alright, now for the part everyone comes to these videos for. The bad points about the new Orc Codex. See, Orcs overall have a really black sense of slapstick humour, which came across as a real stuff-it, will-be-right mentality in the previous codexes. This was represented in-game with a degree of randomness that either benefited or greatly hindered the Orc player at crucial moments. It also made the army hard to predict, however. My good friend Dean, who is a long-time Fungus player, has actually provided some examples of this fun from previous editions. The first example. During a game with the Eldar player proceeded to systematically annihilate all of the threatening Orc units from one corner of the table with his Aspect Warriors, leaving a sole Weird Boy alive, and because he wasn't deemed a threat, he moved on. The next Orc turn, however, the Weird Boy randomly generated the Zap psychic power and exploded a Wave Serpent, killing 4 of the 7 Dire Avengers inside. Then the explosion killed another 6 Howling Banshees that were standing nearby and crippled the Eldar's entire attack on that side of the board, much to the surprise of both players. Second example. At a crucial turn 6 moment against, funny enough, my Chaos Space Marines, a Weird Boy was contesting the make or break objective in the game and would have resulted in a win for the Orc player. He rolled the Here We Go power and had to deep strike, mishapped, and lost the Orc player the game, and that was pretty funny. Poor Dino. Facing against a guard line, 30 Orcs randomly deep struck behind them, resulting in 6 dead Leman Russes from the charge the following turn. I believe that game was against Keepy, and that was fucking hilarious. Fourth one. A well-placed shock attack gun fired into a unit of 5 Grey Knight Paladins during the Drago Wing days of 5th edition. Dino rolled a double 6 and just instantly removed the Paladins from play. The following shot next turn then proceeded to launch the big mech into combat with Keldor Drago, which was really funny apparently. I didn't see that game, but I'm sure it would have been. The last example here. Orc trucks when they blew up in a random direction used to be really good at setting up your specialist orcs and knobs for that critical charge, but could also push them far out of the way of combat and thus make the unit useless. Yeah, but he didn't mind that. I don't know whether that's all Orc players, but he's put it down here in a list of things that the way randomness worked for you. And it did. It's not like Chaos randomness. Chaos randomness kills 300-point Demon Princes, right? Chaos randomness does stupid things. Orc randomness does stupid things, but somehow it still pays off for you anyway. It's just Orc logic, and I don't know why it works, but it does. It's fantastic. The randomness and humour was greatly culled in the early 7th edition, make it universal error, and leaves the Orcs feeling, in Dean's words, like a crappier guard army. You see, they just lost what made them fun, and this is the only aspect of 40k where random actually works. Point 2. The complete removal of Feel No Pain and invulnerable saves from the Orc Codex, except for the custom force field, which can only be taken on a big mech or a pain boy. This creates disgusting competition for your HQ choices, with players being forced to choose between invulnerable saves, Feel No Pain, or taking the war boss who hits like a freight train. It's okay if you're putting all your eggs in the Death Star basket, but it leaves the army as a whole with very little protection beyond their numbers, which expensive units like Knobs and Looters don't have the luxury of getting. And this is all in an edition where Ignore's cover saves is everywhere. Another thing that hurt the Orcs was Looters getting moved to the heavy support slot. I mean, it kind of makes sense because they're so dagger heavy, but it hurt them overall because the heavy support slot was already overcrowded, and very few Orc elite units are actually worth taking anywhere else. So it just meant that your heavy slot, much like HQ, is now way too hotly contested. Problem number 4, the Flash Gits. You see, they have Orc Knobs stat lines, Orc Knobs point costs, and very powerful short-range guns. But they have a pathetic 6+ armor save and a very low volume of shots. They're unable to take heavy armor, and they have to be with a big mech or pain boy for either an invulnerable save or Feel No Pain, just to have some actual staying power. And good luck getting them into range with their guns, and even better luck trying to hit with them, because against all odds, if you do get there, you've only got ballistic skill 2. They're an awesome unit fluff-wise and model-wise, but rules-wise, they're fucking horrible, right? Another problem is special characters like Captain Badrock, Boss Snickrot, Captain Zugstrak. They're no longer upgrade options for their specialist unit, and they're now fighting for, again, those valuable slots in the crowded HQ slot. Number 6. The Orc Mob Rule in comparison to its predecessor really sucks. In the previous edition, Orcs were fearless when they dropped until they dropped 10 models. Then what happened was their leadership would slowly equal the amount of models remaining in the unit until it dropped down to 7, at which point, being the standard leadership of most Orcs, it leveled out. This made large mobs of lads really good and didn't penalise small units such as Looters. The new rule is that when you fail leadership test, you roll on a table. If you have a character, you'll sustain D6 strength 4 hits. And if you're using the Gaskell supplement, it's 3 plus D3 and rally. This doesn't hurt big mobs so much, but it can be devastating to the smaller specialised units like Looters, or expensively tooled units like Knobs who can't afford to take casualties like that. Orc Stompers. These are a bad one. You pay a Warhound's point price, but without the benefits of being a gargantuan god machine. You can get 2 fully tooled up Wraith Knights or 2 Imperial Knights for the cost of a single Orc Stomper. A single Wraith Knight or Imperial Knight alone will beat a Stomper, let alone 2, because these lack the God Machine rules. They lack Void Shields, they lack whack all the good things that protect the Imperial Titans. Number 8. Gorkanauts and Morkanauts. In Dino's view, they're horrible, horrible models, and the rules were not thought out too well either. Size-wise, both suffer as they're too big for their in-game role. Their survivability is questionable thanks to the mere 6 hull points and the potential one-shot chance enemies have on them. It's just ludicrous. You know, Space Marine melter guns in a drop pod, most Space Marine armies have something like that. They will come down, they will fuck this thing up. That's just the way of life. Dino doesn't like the model, and he's an Orc player. Me personally, I don't mind the model. I've seen worse. Now, the Gorkanaut itself. It's like a Land Raider. They're walkers who try to do anything. One part transport, one part dreadnought. It's got a power core, it's got anti-infantry, but it comes off short at everything. Their dagger cannon is good, the only thing good about the unit, but they lack the speed or survivability to do much with it, let alone being only able to transport 5 orcs. What kind of a unit in an orc army actually has 5 models? Right? And even if you get across the board, you're not an assault vehicle. So what are you going to do? Dump your precious cargo out in front of the enemy? And they just sit there for a turn? What's worse though is you're forced to take this abomination in Dreadhead formations as the GW formation attacks. Moving on from the Gorkanaut, we still have the Morkanaut. They're more survivable than Gorkanauts because they remove their transport capacity for a rare custom force field. But their guns are also very scary on paper. That is, of course, until you realise that all of them are single shot and the Orcs are ballistic skilled too. Had the Morkanaut had the capacity to take the Gorkanaut's dagger cannon, it would have been a really, really good Orc unit. Number 9. Gaskell Mad Uruk Thraka. Man, he got the nerf hammer big time. Right in the stats. You see, compared to 5th edition, he has less attacks, less toughness, less strength, but he has a power core, so that's kind of negligible, right? Effectively, he has the same stats now as a regular war boss, rather than being the biggest, baddest, meanest orc in the galaxy. He also became a Lord of War choice, and that means he's now competing with the likes of Gilliman, who has strength 6, trying to remember Gilliman's stats. I think it's 6 strength 10 AP1 attacks with the potential of being D. And they're also Armor Bane, and they're also Initiative, and Gaskell's got, 4 strength 10 AP2 power core attacks, and an Initiative 1 as well. Yeah. This is another case of piss poor balance on Games Workshop's behalf. Point 10. Removal of the old Zugwort and WAAAGH Gutsmech from the new Codex, thanks to the Chapter House Studios fallout. They're not a critical loss or anything. I mean, Orc war bosses can take a special war bike as a relic item, and in Zogwart's case, he was pretty unexceptional. As Dino says, it was just fun turning enemy characters into squigs. But they were never officially replaced. Point number 11. Burner Jets still suck, but they look cool. Point 12. Some of the rules for items are rather pointless. For example, stick bomb chuckers allow units to assault from vehicles to count as having assault grenades that turn. Where this would be great for armies like the Dark Eldar, whose dedicated assault units like Incubi don't have assault grenades, Orcs on the other hand do all have assault grenades in every assault unit, so the stick bomb chucker is pointless unless you want to assault with something that's not designed for assault. I don't get it either. It's a stupid upgrade. Point 13. Deathcopters. They still don't have a multi-part plastic kit. Only a single overpriced failcast one. The plastic 5th edition snap-fit ones from the starter kit, the Assault on Black Reach, they were never actually released separately. That really sucks because the Deathcopters are actually a really good unit in the Orc decks. I will point out, however, you can acquire them from old sets of Black Reach at a pretty reasonable cost via eBay and by swap and sell pages. Moving on. Point number 14. Orc Dagger Jets. They've really got the nerf hammer, and they no longer get double shots in a WAAAGH. Plus the increase in points, they're just not viable anymore for most Orc players. It is what it is. Point 15. Orc Walkers. Oh boy. You see, at a time when everything is being comparable to a monstrous creature, these things are not monstrous creatures, right? They've got armor values, they've got low hull points, they've got terrible ballistic skill, and they're mediocre in hand-to-hand combat. You put one of these things up against a Wraith Knight, it will crush all three of them in one turn without even breaking a sweat. It's disgusting. You know what? To add insult to injury, they're overcosted as all fuck. Killer cans, as one viewer pointed out, went from 35 points each to 50 points in the last rules update. Why? They were just about right at 35 points. Point 16. Orcs no longer have an actual orc tank or gun track or anything like that. Ever since they changed looted vehicles so that they are no longer less reliable Leman Russ, Orcs have really struggled in that zone. Sure, you've still got the looted wagon, which is fine as a transport option, but upgrading a battle wagon with an ARD case and a kill cannon, that gets expensive fast. And in the end, it only leaves you with a weaker version of Leman Russ, with a transport capacity which it doesn't even need, because it's in the DACA roll. Point 17. The biggest hurt in the 7th edition is the Over-Reliance of Formations. You see, formations are used to hold the weaker codexes up. This affects not just orcs, but Tyranids, Chaos, anything like that. You simply can't use orcs in a combined arms detachment unless you want to lose. This is a huge sore point, and you'd think it would be nullified by the fact that formations are a generalised thing across the board in 40k now, but unfortunately formations are incredibly unbalanced, ranging from Decurion bullshit on one side and Force Org breaking detachments on the other, like the Ultramarines and Space Marines have with their free transports. It's now reached the stage where if an army doesn't have formations, it's seen as odd rather than the other way around, with some small codexes such as Harlequins being made up purely of formations. And sadly for me, people who watch these videos, the What Broke the Fan series, often say to me, but this codex or army can't be as bad as you say, Macca, because it won X tournament or placed top 3, or some other equally contrived nonsense. I'll say it to you right now. What people are forgetting here is that you have to look at the situation. You have a very singular build list, very specific formations, played a very specific way in a certain meta. Yeah, it can perform. There was a Lictor spam Tyranid list that I believe even took out the Las Vegas Open. But is that indicative of the codex? Fuck no, it isn't. It's indicative of that formation build. And with that in mind, where are the orcs? Once, orcs are a menace. They were a fun army to play against. And you never, ever, ever thought to yourself, this is going to be easy. Instead, when you fought orcs, you knew you were fighting an army which despite being comical, was as hard as nails. Yeah, they had expendable numbers, but they were backed up by melee monsters and random firepower that always seemed to leave a mark. And it's not what it is anymore. It's now become a low model count army with low morale, expensive single units, predictable HQ with a heavy loadout, and they've got weak, costly walkers all backed by an over-reliance of formations. If you ask me, that's what broke the fans. Thanks for watching the video. We'll see you all next time.